Islamic moderation. Our season summer program on Islamic moderation is about to begin. Please have a nice seat and open your camera. Okay, thank you very much for preparing yourself to join our season. Welcome, Mr. Rafiq Muzakir. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for having me, Brother Sobar.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Respectable, the chair of SPIM, Miss Khalifatul Fauzia, and ladies and gentlemen, I am Sobar Muhammad Johari, the moderator of the session today. I'm very pleased to see you here and will welcome all of you to this session about summer program Islamic moderation. Today, the seminar is about the science, science in Islamic perspective, and it is the interesting the topic. Uh, okay, ladies and gentlemen, our speaker today is Mr. Dr. Rafiq Muzakir. He is the big intellectual in Muhammadiyah. Mr. Rafiq Muzakir obtained his middle school in Madrasah Muallimin Muhammadiyah, right, in Yogyakarta, and then pursued undergraduate study in Islamic law at Al Azhar University of Egypt, and his master degree was completed in the Department of Middle East Studies Gadjah Mada University, Indonesia in 2011, and with scholarship from Fulbright, wow, Fulbright Dicty, he started his doctoral studies in the Department of Religious Studies, Arizona State University in 2017, and finished it in this year, right, Mr. Rafiq?
No, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, okay. And his dissertation in title Tradition and Modernity in the Ulama Discourse on Usurpation of Power. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rafiq is, I think, is raising intellectual in Muhammadiyah. And before the presentation begin, let me inform how the presentation will be going. On the first, Mr. Dr. Rafiq will be invited to present the material about 40 minutes. After that, there will be question and answer session and followed by conclusion. And now, I think, now and allow me to welcome to speaker Dr. Rafiq Muzakir to deliver presentation. So, Mr. Rafiq Muzakir, I'm sorry, Doctor, the floor is yours.
Right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'inu ala umuri dunya waddin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil mursalin nabiyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man sara ala nahjihi ila yaumiddin amma ba'd. Let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the committee for having me, for inviting me to this honorable forum. And it is really my honor to be a speaker, to be one of you in this meeting. And thank you for my dear friend, Brother Sobar, for introducing me. And I really don't deserve such, a mention. I'm just, ordinary person's lecturer in university who happen to be now in University of Edinburgh, but I don't deserve that title of rising and big intellectual. I'm really not. Uh, Initially, I was asked to speak about moderation, the face of moderation in Europe. Then the committee changed the topic. Now I was asked, I'm being asked to speak about moderation in science, or moderation in integrative science. But before I proceed, I want to make a short remark, short comment on the term moderation. I would be honest that I have a kind of discomfort, you may say unease, to the concept of moderation. I know we can use the word moderation for our own agenda, Muslim and Islamic agenda, but out there, the concept of moderation has been entangled, has been connected with, colonial and liberal agenda. I truly respect if the committee retain this concept or choose to use this concept of moderation, but for my personal presentation, I would prefer a term that is more Quranic and coming from our own source, which is the term wasatiyah. And again, you have your own choice as long as you can justify it, and as long as you are aware that we need to decolonize the concept of moderation, then you can go with it. But for my personal choice, I would prefer the concept of wasatiyah. And therefore, now I proceed to my presentation. I give the title for my presentation, Fostering Islamic Wasatiyah through the Integration of Sciences. And this is the breakdown, the explanation why the concept of moderation could be problematic. It's not inherently problematic, but it is potentially problematic. We need to be aware. The concept of moderation can be very much Western-centric and colonial. And this concept of moderation has its own story, the story of the colonization in modern world. During the colonial era, indigenous and non-Western forms of expression, resistance, and governance were often labeled as extreme or irrational. So there was a time when the Western countries came to our countries, the Westerners came to our countries, colonized us, and when we want to fight back with peaceful means, or sometimes with resistance, sometimes with war, then they start to use the label, oh, you are extremists, you are intolerant, now you are not moderate. Then they use the concept of moderation as a tool for maintaining status quo. What I mean by status quo is colonization and imperialism and controlling dissent, controlling rebel. And I'm pretty much troubled by this concept, in particular at this moment during the time of genocide in Gaza. The concept of moderation has been used to pacify us, to make us as a passive person. That's why I don't like the concept of moderation, because those who carry gun to fight back against the colonizers, against the Israeli troops, military people, they will be labeled as extremists. So we need to be aware that such a concept has a heavy agenda behind it. Now, in our media, it's been circulating. We have 5 young intellectuals going to Israel, and there are other events as well following this, controversial news. The word that they use to come to be part of the conversation in Israel is that we are moderate Muslim. And what they mean by being moderate is that we are willing to accept you. Israel. So those who are not willing, those who are fight back, they are not moderate. This is the inherent problem behind the concept of moderation, and I think we need to be aware and being careful. I think if this is my own choice, we need to detach ourselves from such concept. But if you choose, I mean, if you want to use this concept, you need to fill it with Islamic agenda. You need to explain what do I when I'm using the concept of moderation. This is my definition of moderation, which is completely different from colonial and liberal agenda. Okay, that is, I think, the starting point for our discussion this morning. Why then we can use the concept of wasatiyah? Well, I think it's very clear. It is a Quranic concept, and everyone, each of us, needs to memorize this verse.
Bayangin bro, bahas kayak gini lah, pusing gak?
Need to memorize this verse in a good manner. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Wa kadzalika ja'alnakum ummatan wasata litakunu syuhada'a 'alan nas wa yakuna rasulu 'alaikum syahida. Al-Baqarah verse 143. And so we have made you believers a middle community, ummatan wasato, so that you might be witness, syuhada, over humanity, and that the messenger might be a witness over you. We need to highlight, and here I bold the word wasato, and it needs an explanation how we translate the concept of wasatiyah, and then how it is connected to our discussion of integrating science. The concept of wasatiyah can be identified or can be interpreted as the ability to absorb various kinds of knowledge from anywhere, filtering it systematically. So to be wasati, you have to have wide perspective. You have to be knowledgeable. You read as much as you can. And then you absorb it, but then you filter it. You use it for your own agenda, not for someone else's agenda. And then you make a synchronization or synthesis or integration in a creative manner. And then once you are done with it, now you try to spread it to the world. That is what Quran means by syuhada'a 'alan nas. You are the witness over humanity because you are willing to spread it to the global humanity. Now, how to bring the concept of wasatiyah to the issue of science. One, I already speak about the definition of wasatiyah. Again, it's not moderation, it's wasatiyah. Then I will be speaking about shortcoming in our modern scholarship, the importance of integrative sciences, and the methodology that we use or will be using in our university in UMY, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. And if I have a time left, then I'll explain a little bit about the center that I'm currently leading in university, the center that is in charge of coordinating the integration efforts in our university. Okay, now shortcoming in our current scholarship. Weaknesses. What I mean by shortcoming is weaknesses. We need to be able to diagnose, to identify the points where we are weak, that we still need to improve. And here is my identification. Here is my diagnosis of our current scholarship. What I mean by our is Muslim scholarship, and especially Indonesian academia, Indonesian universities. Number one is that the way we look at knowledge, the way we look at science is still very much, following Western paradigm, Western worldview of looking at the science itself. The problem is that science in the West, or knowledge in the West, is colonialistic and imperialistic. We are not against the West in and of itself. Why do we hate the West for being the West? No, we despise the West epistemically. We despise the West because their system of thought is incompatible with our system of thought. Please remember, we are not against the West because they are the West, but because their system of thought is incompatible with our system of thought. Their worldview is not in line, cannot be reconciled with our Islamic worldview. I need to be clear. We are not against the West for being the West. If we are against the West, why do we speak in English now? Why do I'm sitting in here in one flat in Edinburgh, in Scotland? We are not against the West because the West is the West as geographical entity. No, because at the end of the day, we have in the Quran a concept sayings that East and the West belong to Allah. Walillahil masyriq wal maghrib fa aynama tuwallu fasamma wajhullah. Whenever you direct your face, then you will find the face of Allah. You will find the wajah of Allah. Now, what is the problem with the science in the West? Let me quote a book by Wa'il Halab. It's really my favorite author. Many assume. Let me begin by saying that he is a scholar now residing in America, in University of Columbia in New York, and he is a scholar of Islamic law with Palestinian background, with Christian background as well. But if you read the book, you will find as if he is already Muslim. Many assume that he's actually hiding his identity of being a Muslim. He just don't want to declare, because his discourse is pretty much empathetic, giving sympathy to our worldview, our belief. And this book, Restarting Orientalism, I believe it was published in 2019, and this book is written to criticize his fellow Christian Palestinian scholar teaching in the same university by the name of Edward Said. Probably many of you familiar with this intellectual name, a towering figure, Edward Said. Edward Said criticized Western scholarship when they represent Islam and Muslim in their, intellectual publication. Now, Wa'il Halab comes along, criticizing Edward Said. Oh, Edward Said, your critique is not sharp enough, and your critique need to be, brought further. And here in this book, he also criticizing, and this is the main idea of the book, is criticizing Western scholarship of Islam. And in here, I quote one particular excerpt where he criticized the science in the West. Every society needs science, he argued. He's talking about one French scholar by the name of René Guénon, Abdul Wahid Yahya. He's converting into Islam a long time ago during the colonial period. Now he's quoting that this convert French guy by the name of René Guénon. So for René Guénon, every society needs science, and everyone know this axiom. Everyone understand this, and all civilization had their own systems of science. Yet the modern West is the only civilization that created a form of science exclusively geared for the promotion of material benefit, accumulation of wealth, instrumentalism, bodily comfort, all the while limiting its sphere to industrial purposes and mechanical invention. So this is our current reality. We have science in our everyday life. We have phone, we have internet, we have computer, we have our laptop, we have chat GPT. But these kinds of technology were developed not for something spiritual. It is developed exclusively for materialism, for material benefit. And this is the critique of René Guénon long time ago. I think he passed away in 1950 or 1940, but it was a long time ago. If he live in our current situation, he will see the development toward materialism and secularism is even more significant. So this is the reality of our current science and current scholarship. It is Western science, and Western science itself is liberal. Western science itself is detached from a spiritual orientation. Then, if you detach values, religious values, Islamic values, or metaphysical values, this is the outcome. This is the thing that we have been seeing in our current reality. This is just the product of Western philosophy, Western science. You have colossal environmental destruction. You have massive colonialist and imperialist atrocities and dehumanization, unprecedented forms of political and social violence, the construction of lethal political identities, the poisoning of food and water, the extermination of alarming numbers of species, increasingly worrying health threats, indecent disparity between rich and poor, social communal disintegration, the rise of narcissistic sovereign individualism and sociopathology, and so on and so on. You can read it by your own. If you are interested in Halak's critic, or you may say the critic to modern science, then you may refer to this book, Restating Orientalism. I really enjoy reading this book. It's a bit challenging to understand, to grasp the content of this book. But if you are if you are comfortable with Indonesian language, for example, you may start by reading my review of the book. Is published online as well. You might type the book and his name and my name, and you can find the summary of main ideas of Halak in this book. It's really enlightening. It gives you ideas how we can approach science today, how we can approach even larger than just a science, how we can approach the Western world epistemically today. Now, moving to the next scholar with the next quotation, I also enjoy reading this book, a book by Khalid Abul Fadl, Reasoning with God, Reclaiming Sharia in the Modern World. It's a big, thick, around 500 or even close to 600. And in this book, he is talking about the reality of Muslim world today, in particular with regard to the issue of Islamic law, the issue of Sharia. But he speak in significant extent about science in the Muslim societies today. We are suffering from the lack of, or even the absence of, global contribution of Muslim world. We have many numbers of Muslim all over the world, billion, not only million, billion of Muslim in the world, but our shortcomings is that we don't really contribute to the development of science today. We are the consumers of the science. We are not producers. Because we are just passive recipient, then we cannot reorient the the path of the science today. So the problem today in our scholarship, in our education system, is that we are not encouraging, we are not really doing serious research, we are not doing really improvement of technology. Again, we are just a passive recipient. And here's the quotation: considering the significant number of Muslims and the universal impact of the Islamic faith, the absence of Muslim contributions to the major intellectual orientations of the world is troubling. I already highlight what he means by this sentence. Still, about saddening fact in our educational system is still very Eurocentrism. And this scholar, I like reading this book, Sayyid Farid Al-Attas. He is a Malaysian scholar, currently teaching in NUS, National University of Singapore. And he's still family of Sayyid Naqib Al-Attas. And I think he is the nephew of Sayyid Hussein Al-Attas. He's a sociologist. And in this book, he talked about the sociology of Ibn Khaldun and how his thought on sociology can be developed and can be used as a framework to do research in contemporary world. It is beneficial, but we need to build up something upon the legacy of Ibn Khaldun. It is not enough. What I mean by that is he's saying that we can use Ibn Khaldun framework, but we need to develop it further. We need to engage with modern scholarship, then a combination of Ibn Khaldun and modern scholarship. And here's what he's saying about Eurocentrism. Since the education system in the Muslim world are mirror images of those in the West, it follows that the problems of Eurocentrism are defining features of the social sciences there as well, with the added dimension that in the Muslim world, Eurocentrism implies alienation from the Muslim tradition of scholarship. So the way we look at, for example, economics, the way we look at politics, the way we look at natural science, you name it, is still the way the Westerners, the Europeans, look at these fields. That's why bringing Islamic worldview and then developing integration as a paradigm is very, very important to move away from such a Eurocentric paradigm. And again, this is the result, and this is the, you may say, the legacy of colonialism in the past. The Dutch, the British, you name it, they came to our lands, they colonized our lands, they took our natural resources, but more important than that, they colonized our mind. They colonized our mentality. They colonized our psyche. They colonized the way we think about knowledge. And what we need to do now is to decolonize our mind. We are done with decolonization of our land, except for the Palestine. Still a big project, big homework for us. So it's not really correct if I say that we are done with decolonization of our land. We still have an ongoing project of decolonization of Palestine. But in our yard, in our home, what we need to do is to decolonize our mentality, to decolonize our mindset by, dismissing or despising Eurocentrism. Now, let me move to the next topic, which is the importance of integrative science. I think I have only 10 or 15 minutes left for presentation, and I would love to have, a Q&A session rather than speaking too long for my own presentation. Why is the integrative science is significant or essential or important? Let me quote here a saying or a quotation by Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah. He is a jurist from medieval time. He is a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, and one of his well-known or famous book is entitled I'lamul Muwaqqi'in. Basically, what he is encouraging to us, what he is saying in this statement is that we need to understand reality of our world today, and we need to also understand the Quranic and the Sunnah direction or the Sunnah guidance to answer our current reality. So basically what he's saying is that we need to understand what he calls as fahmul waqi', understand our reality. And then fahmul wajib fil waqi', to understand what is obligatory in dealing with this reality. And in order to understand our reality, we need sciences. We need ilm. Ilm haqiqah ma waqa'a bil qara'in wal ammarat wal alamat. And basically this is the domain of science and social humanities. So you can read this excerpt by yourself to make it shorter. I can move to the next slide. Just read by your own.
Okay, Mr. Rafiq.
Okay, the key is understanding reality, and this is the domain of natural science and social humanities. And then another key is understanding the ruling of God, and this is the domain of Islamic traditional sciences. Let me continue. And this is the quotation by Abu Hamid al-Ghazali on the importance of integrating reasons and revelation. I give you another 30 seconds to read this excerpt. Oh. Right, we move on. Now, this is also a good book if you're coming from natural science and you like history. This is a recommended book by George Saliba. This is the history of Islamic astronomy or astronomy in Islamic civilization. Basically, he's saying that yes, Muslims in the past, scientists and astronomers in the past, they did learn from Hellenistic astronomy. They did learn from Greek. But what they did is going beyond just quotation, going beyond just copying and just repetition. They do copy, but they also criticize that, then they also develop. For example, astronomers in the time of Aristotle, for example, they want to know the sky, the the earth, but for something that is not an Islamic. They want to know how the world changed in the sublunar region. Basically, it's just a kind of astrology. But when Muslims study their works, their books, they get the fact, they grasp the knowledge of astronomy, but they throw away their Hellenistic worldview, their belief in paganism, for example. So when Muslims study something from outside, they classify this is compatible with us, and this is not compatible, and we need to make it in line with our belief system. Okay, this is also another enjoyable book, Franz Rosenthal. Basically, this is the history of the concept of ilm in Islam. Even though he himself is a Jew, but he has in-depth research on how the concept of ilm has developed in Islam over time. You can read it in 10 or 20 seconds. All ulum is interdependent. You cannot separate aqidah from astronomy. You cannot separate akhlaq from physics, from biology, for example. It would be foolish. It would be stupid. Foolish meaning stupid if you split them. Why integration of science is important? Because it is a mandate from the Quran and the Sunnah. And I quote here Surah Az-Zumar, verse number 9. Qul hal yastawi alladhina ya'lamun walladhina la ya'lamun innama yatadzakkaru ulul albab. And this is my interpretation of such an ayah. You can read it. Okay, let's move on. I will be speaking specifically about the methodology that we have been developing in our university, in Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, and we are also making effort to socialize this kind of framework to our civitas academica or our colleagues, friends, fellow lecturers, and also to our student. We call it as a holistic integration. Basically, you are combining your own field, your own major. Let's say you are from physics, you are from international relation, you are from accountants, for example. That's your starting point. Now you combine with ethical guidance from the Quran and the Sunnah. Then you combine it with Islamic intellectual tradition, at-Turath al-Islami. Then you combine it with contemporary humanities and social sciences Basically, you have 4 units here. Number 1 is your project, your origination, where you are coming from, your field, and then you combine it with ethical guidance from the Quran Sunnah. This is number 2. Number 3, you combine it with Islamic intellectual tradition, and then with contemporary science and social humanities. What do I mean by ethical guidance from the Quran and Sunnah? So this need to be separated from concrete guidance. Concrete guidance meaning a guidance that is given in the Quran in particular form. For example, when dealing with inheritance or warosa, inheritance meaning waris, Quran give us numbers. You give a half for a man. You give this kind of number to a woman, to a father, to a brother. That is concrete. And Sunnah give us many more concrete guidance. The Prophet teach us how to deal with a business. What is the concrete guidance in the business? But in many ways, Quran and Sunnah is not detailed enough. Quran and Sunnah just give us universal guidance. Then what you need to rely on is actually the ethical or universal guidance from the Quran and the Sunnah. This is important because if you try to find more concrete guidance from the Quran and Sunnah for your own field, you might not necessarily find it. For example, if you are biologist or you are a person who is studying physics, you might ask, what is the Quranic view of or the Quranic concrete guidance of physics, for example? You might not find the direct answer from the Quran because the Quran is universal guidance. Our Quran in many ways is not concrete enough, is not detailed enough. Then what you need to do is tending to find the abstract, ethical, universal guidance. What do I mean by intellectual tradition is a legacy coming from the past. It's not necessarily al-ulum syariah. Yes, you may need a book of adab, aqidah, kalam, falsafah, mantik, tafsir, fiqh, usul fiqh, tasawuf, tarikh, siyasah, but a legacy of science in Islamic civilization also includes things like physics, medicine, pharmacy, agriculture, biology, physics, and astronomy. And to have access to this kind of tradition, you need to be able to read Arabic. And then, this is the point. You have a homework now. You have to develop your Arabic ability, your Arabic capacity. And really, if you want to reclaim science, if you want to be advanced in science, you have to access this type of legacy from the past. And you cannot avoid learning Arabic. If you are young, I would encourage you spend your time, make investment to study Arabic. To my fellow lecturers in university, for those who are a bit senior, probably they are not fresh enough to study Arabic. They don't have time to study Arabic because they are already busy. What they can do is relying on translation. That's still fine too. Many of these books, for example, the books by Ibn Sina, the books by Ibnul Haytham, Ibn Nafis, these kind of books are already translated in English. So another way to have an access to this book is reading the translation. Or there is also translation in Indonesia, but I believe it's not many. And if there is such a thing as translation, probably the issue is the quality of translation. But again, what we mean by integration of science, that we also take a benefit from Islamic intellectual tradition. And also, and lastly, last but not the least, we cannot avoid dealing with modern science. Again, we are not anti-modernity, we are not anti-development, so we need to learn them and put them in conversation with the Quran, Sunnah, put them in conversation with Islamic intellectual tradition. Now in our university, there is a center called Center for Integrative Science and Islamic Civilization. This is our second year working in university. Even though with a great regret, I have to, left the position for 10 months because I have here my duty to work as a postdoctoral researcher in University of Edinburgh. But we are in conversation as well. We are in communication through online platforms. Basically, our job is to develop a paradigm how to approach knowledge. I've just mentioned this. I've just mentioned such a paradigm to you, and then the next duty is to propagate, to bring this paradigm to our scholars in our university, and it will also come to our students. We have 5 mission actually, but I quote here just 3 to make it short, and you can read by yourself. Yeah, basically our job is to conduct a research based on paradigm of integration and develop curricula, and then being a reference center for excellence for larger audience, not only in university but also society, community outside academia or outside university. I'll stop here and then we'll have a Q&A session. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Raufik Muzakir, for giving us such information and interesting presentation. This this is a very interesting study, I think, and even Dr. Raufik provide reference to several books. And in one of the session is about the interesting study, and I think this, yes, there's even the every society needs the science, and civilization have their own the system of science. Human are giving the gift of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala in the form of reason. So civilization is actually the result of the creativity of the human mind, and human can develop their mind and have the will to progress. The foremost Muslim intellectual, the Ibn Khaldun, said that the substances of civilization is science. Meanwhile, Islamic civilization is knowledge based on the hasanah of the Islamic world. And ladies and gentlemen, now come to the question and answer session. I would like to have 3 or 4 the question for participant. Please raise your hand, and before you give the question, please mention your name. Okay, we start off the Alif Rizky Ramadan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sobar and Johari. Thank you, Dr. Raufik Muzakir. First of all, I appreciate your concern in integration because I'm one of that kind people to talk about integration in my research field study. One of the things that I agree with you in this case of integration is that we need to realize that Islam as an objective research, like what Kunto Wijoyo has said in his book Islam sebagai Ilmu, that we cannot blindly say that everything in the West is good, but we have to filter it out and take it some of them that we deem it as what he said, what is called as a good one that doesn't bother with the Islamic Sharia. Now, one thing that I like to ask about your institution, sir.
EISIC.
EIS, yes, I'm sorry.
CISIC, just call it CISIC. It's a lot easier.
CISIC, okay, physics. This is a great thing, and I love it if we could arrange it into every Muhammadiyah university have this kind of institution, because Muhammadiyah as a movement, as an berkemajuan movement, progressive movement, must and have to create this kind of integrative society institution. But how we can appeal to the pimpinan pusat Muhammadiyah to open all these institutions? That is my question. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you for Brother Alif for your very interesting and important question.
Okay, the
Uh,
second question. Sorry, Mr. Rafiq, Dr. Rafiq. We write the second question and the question. Hello, any participant to give the question to Dr. Rafiq? Oh, Mr. Abdul Latif Arida. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Rafiq.
Yes, waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for your presentation, Barakallahu Fiik. Before, I would like to ask about research methodology, but you already answered the alternative for the current methodology that UMY applied. So then another question pops up in my mind, because some scholars talk about integrative sciences is impossible because there will be contradiction between the current methodology and Islamized methodology. So my question is, how does this holistic approach dealing with that contradiction? Thank you.
Can you repeat again? What kind of contradiction? Can you elaborate?
When the sciences by the Western methodology contradict with Islam way of approach to the sciences, how to deal with this contradiction? Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, sorry. The next participant to give the question, Mr. Fajar Siddiq.
Thank you for Mr. Rafiq for the presentation. I think that in Muslim society we have a multi-level problem because, as you say, first we need to convince the West worldview about the maybe we need to explain about the wasatiyah that kind of different with moderation in term of West. So our first problem is how to convince the world that the Islam has a better way understanding about the moderation is. And secondly, we have a problem with Muslim society itself because maybe in Indonesia especially, we have a problem with several groups that we can say dominating other groups that's also separate between the religion and also the science. So they just understand the religion based on the text of the Quran and Sunnah. So it's kind of problematic when we want to make the science and the Quran is work together. So I want to know about your opinion. First, how we can make the Islamic golden age back, and we can be qibla of knowledge as we was there. And secondly, how to convince this group that deny the concept of Quran and science to be together. How you convince them that this is not a problem, even we not get the text of the Quran by it detailed. So maybe that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fajar Siddiq. Any else participant to give a question or enough? Just 3 participants. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, I have already 3 participants give the question here. The first one is coming from Alif Rizky Ramadan. He asked about the Kunto Wijoyo perspective, the Islamisasi ilmu, and the second the participant from Abdul Latif Arida. He asked about the Islamic methodology in OMY and holistic. And the third participant, the Fajar Siddiq, he asked about the problematic society in science. Okay, are you ready to answer them, Mr. Dr. Rafiq?
All right, thank you again for Brother Alif, Brother Abdul Latif, from Brother Fajar Siddiq. I really enjoy listening to your questions, such important and thought-provoking questions, and it's my honor to have a conversation with you. I think the point raised by Brother Alif is regarding how to bring such an integration project appeal to larger audience, and in particular to PP Muhammadiyah, right, to Central Board of Muhammadiyah. I think we need to construct a specific discourse. Our responsibility in the future is actually epistemic, or you may say philosophical responsibility. We have sometimes we are proud of having a big building, proud of having many universities, proud of having many students in our university. But I think that kind of pride is still superficial. More important than just being proud of something that is material, we need to develop an epistemic project, or we need to do tajdidul ilm, tajdid al-fikr. And this type of project or integrative project is such an effort. So I would say that we need to, when we speak to the larger audience, we need to convince that we really have a homework regarding our type of system of thought. We don't need to stop building universities or building good facilities, or letting in more students coming to our university. But beyond that, what is more foundational and more important is really constructing a philosophical and solid philosophy to our project of Tajdid. And then I would also to mention that Alhamdulillah, our effort in UMY has already inspired a movement outside of our university. Currently in UAD, there is also a similar project going on. They also established the same body. They call it like task force of integration in UAD. But UMY, we have a specific name. We call it CISIC, or CISIC, Center for Integrative Science and Islamic Civilization. And when the first time I was called by our BPH in UMY, they told us that UMY is located in the backyard of PP Muhammadiyah. So UMY has responsibility toward PP Muhammadiyah. And then when we are done establishing such a paradigm, we need to propagate it. We need to do what we call a da'wah outside UMA. At the very minimum, we propagate our paradigm. We make a movement in Muhammadiyah University, but hopefully we can make an impact also for audience, for university beyond beyond PTM, beyond perguruan tinggi Muhammadiyah, or even beyond academia. And that is something going on right now. Just last year, I published a book by the entitled Integrasi Studi Islam, Social Science and Social Humaniora, and it's been published by Suara Muhammadiyah. And this book is also accessed, read, and discussed by audience outside of Muhammadiyah institution or Muhammadiyah universities. Okay, the second questions from Brother Abdul Latif, what should we do when we find a contradiction, when we have a kind of discomfort with Western science? Is that what you mean, Brother Abdul Latif?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, and I state this clearly in my book, that part of the steps that we need to undertake when we do such an integration project is that we firstly need to decolonize our mind. We need to decolonize our scholarship. We need to decolonize social, humanities, or even natural sciences. So we need to read that kind of references with, we approach that with a distance. Don't say just amin to everything you read from whatever you read from the Western academia. And this is my problem to our current scholarship in our university. I'm teaching in Department of International Relations, for example, and the way we approach this topic, the way we teach our student is very much Eurocentric. If you quote someone, a towering figure in the field of international relation is none other than Morgenthau or any Western thinkers specializing on the issue of international relation. We have very restricted memory. We have very restricted, knowledge on what count as legitimate information. That's why I encourage really the audience and my fellow lecturers in university to read books in Arabic, to read book in English, the translation of Arabic books, to know what the Muslim scholars in the past think about the same project. For example, the issue of international relations. Yes, we do have books from Western scholars, because the field of international relation in the West is actually established after the World War I to deal with the residue of war. Now they establish the subject called international relation atau hubungan internasional. And that's why the way we look at the knowledge is very much still using the way Westerners look at the field, look at the issue of international relation. But way before the Westerners talk about the same thing about international relation, we already have scholars like Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaybani, who established, the so-called fiqh siyar or fiqhul jihad. We have legacies. We have books written in the same topic, in the same field, international relation. The problem is just we don't have language capacity to have an access. We don't have memory. We forget everything from the past. We are kind of trapped with Western-minded scholarship. Again, to answer your question is, we need to recollect memory from the past. We need to decolonize. I'm not saying that we need to stop reading the Western books. Okay, from Brother Fajar, we have multi layers of the problem, how to convince the concept of wasatiyah to the larger audience, probably beyond the Muslim world. Yeah, just do it in a good manner, you try to use persuasive discourse, try to convince that we are not colonialistic, we are rahmah. But I think before talking to the global world, we also have a homework to do for ourselves. We need to convince ourselves that we have such a concept of wasatiyah. We need to, convince ourselves, why don't we use the concept of wasatiyah instead of moderation, for example? When the issue of 5 intellectuals of NU going to Israel sparked to our public discussion, I think I start thinking now that we do have a homework within our own community, that we need to decolonize our own people. They don't understand. They are now embracing liberal Western conception of interfaith dialogue. They embrace what they call as human right, democracy. Why do they come to the Israel? Just to embrace the same concept. Now, instead of talking to the larger audience, I think we also need to start from our own community to convince them, stop talking about someone else from someone else's perspective. I'm really discomfort if a student make their research project for skripsi, for master thesis, dissertation on the topic of radical, for example, on the topic of radicalization or de-radicalization, tolerance, intolerance. If you are using this lens, if you're talking about this topic, then you are talking from someone else spectacle. You are talking from someone else, socio-political agenda. I think we need to problematize this concept. Why don't you use this concept to make the crumble of, for example, the current reality of genocide in Gaza? Now you use this concept of moderation, interfaith, democracy, to preach your own people, to preach Muslim. When you use the concept of de-radicalization, you talk to your own people as if we are Muslim as radical people. Why don't you use the concept of de-radicalization to talk to the Westerners, to the Western scholars, to the Western politicians? That's your problem. That is my source of discomfort hearing this kind of topic, intolerance, de-radicalization. So absolutely, if a student of mine come to me, sir, I want to do research on the topic of intolerance, topic of de-radicalization, I will stop them. Absolutely. Change your topic. I don't like this topic. You need to decolonize your mind. I think I now move to your last question: how to convince the group of people who denies the correlation between Quran and science. It's really the matter of the perspective. What kind of perspective that we propose, put forward to the public? Because Quran and science is still very abstract, still very general topic. What kind of correlation that you want to teach to the public? Is that a type of paradigm that is being embraced by, for example, Harun Yahya? Is that also including the paradigm that is embraced by, for example, Dr. Zakir Naik, for example? If you are picking something that is not convincing for people, then they will start rejecting you. Oh, this is not convincing enough for me. This is still kind of apologetic. And I do in my book discourage readers to deal with the discourse of Harun Yahya. What he's doing is just picking up a fact out there and then saying, look, we do have this in the Quran. And I think to a certain extent, this is also being used by, for example, Dr. Zakir Naik. I do respect him. He's a scholar of comparative religion, and the way he teaches science is not appealing to larger audience, not appealing to scientists, not appealing to academia. Yes, it is appealing for a laity, but I think we need to go beyond that. To make people, believe in Islam through that kind of discourse, probably it works, but I think we need to go beyond just apologetism. We need to, develop something more productive. And what is such a productive paradigm? It is beyond this forum. If you want to know, you might start from reading my book. I do talk about the problem of Harun Yahya. I don't mention Zakir Naik to show that I respect him, even though I just disagree with approach. But I do mention Harun Yahya, and I do mention Maurice Bucaille. The specific term to refer to that kind of paradigm is Bucaillism. Maurice Bucaillism is considered as a problematic by scientists. You also need to read a book by a scholar from Algeria. Wait, let me recall him. He's now teaching in Sharjah in UAE. Nidal Qasum. Nidal Qasum is really, incredible scientist. He's physician. He's also astronomer. He has done a lot of work in science, but he also has a interesting background in Quran, in Islamic tradition. He's the one who rejects such a paradigm, who reject Harun Yahya, who reject Maurice Bucaille. Not me. I'm not a scientist in the sense of producing science. I'm just a scholar of humanities. But if a scientist like him saying that this is too shallow, too superficial, then we need to take into consideration his thought. We need to take his statement seriously. I'll stop here and give the microphone back to Brother Sobar, and I would appreciate if we can stop at this point. I need to do something else, even though we still have 15 minutes left. But I do appreciate if we stop at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rafiq Muzakir. It is interested. And what time in Edinburgh now?
Now 11:15.
Oh, 11:15. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end this session. Before I close this season about the science and Islam, I would like to take the conclusion from what the speaker presented. Thanks for Dr. Rafiq. That's give about many perspective how should Muslim contribute to society today. Even though we have the Quran and Hadith, is Islamic word literature refer to authentic and primary source, namely Quran and Hadith. We find extraordinary concern and encouragement in the Quran for Muslims to seek knowledge. In fact, the first verse was relevant read Iqra bismi rabbika ladzi khalaq. It's read Iqra. And the first door to gaining the knowledge is by reading. Reading can mean understanding and contemplating what is around us. For example, when many people were hit by apple, there was one person named Newton, Newton, who thought that there was an accident where the apple fell. So he read and found an understanding of what happened called the law of gravity. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and now Muslim just for the science is just a customer, not producer today. So it is homework, a kind of homework for our generation. And I say the Dr. Rafiq is intellectual, even though is the intellectual is legacy coming in the past. Thanks for all participants, and I would like to thank for the speaker for the informative and interesting the presentation, and all the participants for very active participant. Finally, give the applause for the speaker and for you all. Thank you. Okay. Finally, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Rafiq, Dr.
Saya
Sabah.
pamit dulu ya. Saya pamit dulu. Terima kasih semuanya sudah ketemu, sudah diskusi.
Jazakumullah khairan, Dr.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.